April 2010, I was 12 years old, and I was a huge fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It was one of my favorite shows. It still is. You see, spring of 2010 came with an announcement. They were doing a live-action version of Avatar: The Last Airbender, directed by a mainstream Hollywood director who at this point people still thought was good at what he did. But as a bright-eyed, bushy little boy, I believed that this could still be good. But then came the warnings. No, adaptations fail. Little did I know how right they'd be. Why did they decide to call him Ong? They know how it's pronounced. This isn't a book adaptation.
My name is Ong. And I'm the Avatar.
There's a show. Someone had to make that decision. You know, his name is Aang. The worst part is, that wasn't even the worst part. How could they mess it up so bad? Something that people love so much, how could they just miss the mark so badly? Well, it turns out adaptations are hard. Something that I think is funny is when I heard about Arcane, a League of Legends show, I dismissed it as another adaptation destined to fail. But then it was good. Really, really good. So in a world where bad adaptations seem significantly more common than good adaptations, what did Arcane do right? First, I want to talk about why so many adaptations fail, and why is it so difficult to make an adaptation in the first place. Video games, anime, live action, film, remakes, there's a lot of ways to make an adaptation. But the first one we're going to talk about is book adaptations. You see, book adaptations highlight a very important part of the process of adapting something. In adaptations, there's a very clear trade between the benefits of the medium in which the story was originally told and the perceived benefits of the new medium you're telling the story in. If you're making a movie out of a book, you're gonna have less time. That being said, books don't have music and they tend not to have visuals. Voila, a clear trade. So for a film adaptation of a book to be worth it, the benefits have to outweigh the deficits, what you're losing. But when you fail to bring value to the new story and you only take away, you end up with a bad adaptation. And that happens a lot. Riot Games based Arcane off of League of Legends and the lore in League of Legends. I've played League of Legends for about 10 years now, on and off, and I've never been invested in lore. I know that some people really enjoy it, but generally speaking, it wasn't something that appealed to me. Which is funny because I'm such a big storytelling guy, but MOBAs aren't a good medium for storytelling. If you look at Last of Us or Uncharted, there are storytelling games. The plot is as important as the gameplay, but you can damn well hate your life playing League without knowing any of the lore. It's still a compelling setting, it's still a compelling world with groups of people, but Arcane did something that was really great. They weren't controlled by the lore as much as they helped it shape the story. Okay, we're getting into spoilers territory. If you are watching this and you still haven't finished season 1 of Arcane, then I suggest you click away, go watch the show, and come back because I will be talking about concepts from the entire season. When I say Arcane is a piece of art, I don't just mean as a story. In any amazing movie or show, you can find a single frame, a beautiful shot that you could hang on your wall as a piece of artwork. With animation, it is artwork, literal art, pen on paper. That's the origins of what animation was. And something animation brings that live action doesn't is that at any moment it can just break away from reality. A really important part of any show, especially animation, is suspension of disbelief. It needs to feel real, but all animation comes with its own style. And that's the first thing Arcane does that really stands out to me. It's just beautiful. And beautiful animation's been done. This isn't something unique to Arcane. But when Riot chose to make an animated show based off of League of Legends, they took full advantage of the medium they chose to tell the story in. It didn't need to be animated this well to be a commercial success. But Arcane is a love letter, a beautiful show made by people passionate about what they're doing. Just take a second and rewatch this scene. The second thing that Arcane does that adds value and makes it a great adaptation is it takes a step away from normal storytelling. Generally, you have a hero, and you mostly follow that hero's perspective as they try to overcome evil or a villain or an antagonist, whatever the conflict is in the story. But in Arcane, the conflict isn't so straightforward. You get a top-down look at many different perspectives. And this was a very purposeful choice by the creators.
I think we were really interested in the two perspectives on like the political situation between Piltover and Zahn. I think it's a good way to show that it's so easy to be very influenced by the perspective that you have and really lack an understanding of what it's actually like on the other side.
I think it was really important to us to show that there are merits and flaws to both sides. No one should come off as a stock villain. Everyone should feel as though the troubles that they're facing are complicated, and don't have easy answers or easy outs.
Not only is this a cool way to tell a story, but it really lends itself to the material that is being adapted, right? League of Legends is a game with hundreds of champions, all from differing regions of the world, many of which are in conflict with one another. So to embrace that shows an awareness and a love for the original material. When I watch Arcane, I see a project with so much passion. And it's funny because I didn't even have that passion for League of Legends. The creators sold me on something that I dismissed.
I think something that is easy to miss when you're caught up in a story, when you really enjoy it, is how everything that you see is a labor of love. Every background, every prop, and every character, someone spends all their time like really focusing on making it the best thing it could possibly be.
They were ambitious by trying to tell the story they chose, and damn did it pay off. Part of the reason this isn't done more often is because it's difficult. There's a lot of complexity to making a story like this. You have multiple characters and you have multiple stories going on at once, and to make one compelling story is difficult, to make 9 is incredibly difficult. For this to work well, you need strong, complex characters. And this leads into the third thing that makes Arcane such a strong adaptation. It's characters. If you get stuck with bad characters trying to tell a story like this, it's so easy for the audience to lose interest in what's happening on screen. But Arcane knocked it out of the park. If someone were to point at any character from the show and say, they're my favorite, I'd go, yeah, that makes sense to me. They made me care about Heimerdinger. Oh my god, I was so uninterested in Heimerdinger, and then I fell in love with him as a character in the show. But it's not just the champions, it's not just the primary characters in the show, the ones we know the names of. It's also everyone else. There's depth. My favorite example of this is when Mel has to choose a gift for one of the councilmen. She has a table in front of her with all sorts of difficult puzzles, and she chooses the children's toy. It highlights her perspective on who he is. It also showcases the fact that she has levied some sort of favor from him. And then in that same episode, she uses that favor to get him to vote for leniency with Jace. But what's even better is after the time skip between episode 3 and 4, we see the councilman still hasn't fixed the puzzle. He can't figure out a toy made for children. That's cool. That's love, that's detail, that's good writing. And a lot of characters have stuff like that. For example, Jace's mother lost 2 of her fingers when she almost died of frostbite and was saved by the magician. And some of these are crucial to the story and character design of different non-champions in the show. For example, Silco's eye and Vander's arm are constant reminders to the conflict they had between them. And that conflict is central to the entire progression of the story. It's cool too because before you know what happened between the two, the show uses the injuries to foreshadow that conflict. There's one arc that stands out to me the most, not because it's the best, but because I expected it the least. The story of a brother betrayed for reasons he couldn't understand.
I am the monster you created.
A victim of circumstance set out to change the world he was born into.
You ripped out all my parts.
So determined to cause that change that he would resort to almost any means necessary.
Worst of all, for me to live, I gotta kill the part of me that's
After parts 1 and 2, I was worried Silco's story wouldn't have a satisfying conclusion. For better and worse, there's been a trend recently towards complex antagonists in stories. It's important to understand while these characters make sense to us, it doesn't justify the means in which they approach things. However, when they make a villain human, it makes for a much more compelling form of conflict. And Silco's a human, and the things that he's trying to change need to be changed.
what could have been.
If you look at Silco as an anti-hero, the main character of Arcane, it creates a very interesting lens to interpret the story. He is often the catalyst for change. The foundation of his philosophy is the reason he's alive. But if you look at a good character arc, growth and change are a necessity. Silco believed he would sacrifice anything to cause the change he wanted in the world, and when Vander couldn't, it caused a brutal falling out. This idealistic state of Zon, where the people of the lanes would have an opportunity to exist as people, equals, not an undercity living below upper society, it's noble. Silco and Vander wanted to change the world that had wronged them. The only difference was Vander had things he wasn't willing to sacrifice to achieve that. But Silco's existence was a constant reminder of that difference. The air quality of the underground, his eye, the blatant wealth inequality separated by a bridge. Changing that would influence everything. But then something changed. Silco had someone he couldn't sacrifice. And then suddenly everything he had never understood about Vander's decisions made sense. And even as he was sitting in a chair, bleeding out, his imminent death, the result of Jinx's instability, Silco still loved her, insisting that she was perfect, just the way she was.